Scotland, Stark Talk with Edie Stark.
I'm in the London studio of a well-known and highly talented photographer. Like millions of other Paul McCartney fans, I know what this mother of three boys looked like 40 years ago. On the back cover of McCartney's first solo album, there she is, photographed by her mother Linda, a tiny, dark-haired baby peeking out from inside her dad's jacket. Now a professional photographer in her own right, a retrospective of her work is on show in London and in her book From Where I Stand. Images include intimate portraits of A-list celebrities and models, behind-the-scenes views of fashion shows and dance performances, evocative landscapes of Scotland, Sussex, Arizona, intriguing still lives of domestic interiors and empty beds, and humorous pictures from everyday life.
I love people and watching people and observing people, and the challenge of trying to actually catch that in a still image really intrigues me.
Mary McCartney, your younger sister, fashion designer Stella McCartney, whose boots you are wearing as we speak, once said it was not cool to be a McCartney, that you were famous before you'd done anything. Did you feel that too?
I think what she meant by that was people find out the McCartney part of your surname and then they'd look at you like you were kind of an animal in the zoo. We'd get it when we were kids. We'd go to restaurants and then everyone turn and look at us, and we just thought, firstly, we thought it was quite rude because we'd not been brought up to stare at people like that. I think that's maybe why I became a photographer, because it gave me an excuse to observe without being rude. It gave me a purpose to it. But still, I think we've been brought up to want to accomplish things in our own right and not just sort of earn a reputation off the back of our parents' reputation, really. To have a sense of purpose is what most human beings want, really, are looking for, I think.
When do you first remember realising that the camera was playing such an enormous part of everyday life?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, apart from growing up, early memories, Mum and Dad were on tour and we used to travel with them on tour. Like, we travelled as a family unit, so there would be photographers in places where we'd arrive. But more as an inspiration was growing up with my mother. She was a photographer and then more of a fine art photographer once she got married and had a family. She did books and exhibitions. And she'd always have a camera with her. But I have a really early childhood memory of her taking me to her dark room and seeing her putting a piece of blank paper in to that tray with the liquid and then seeing the image come out was really, as a child, was quite fascinating.
When did you get your first camera?
I really didn't know what to do as a career. When I left school, I was always interested in photography, but I didn't necessarily have the drive or confidence to be a photographer because I thought everyone could take pictures. I'd grown up around it. So I worked as a picture researcher and was looking at photos and going to archives, but then through that my mum asked me to go into her archive and help her edit pictures for books or gallery shows. And looking through her contact sheets inspired me because they're so different, and it was like a diary, and then you could see in one contact sheet who she'd seen, little quirky things that she'd seen that interested her, and that made me pick up the camera. And she gave me my first camera. She gave me her Leica R7, and then from that I went and just did a short course to learn how to use the camera.
So were you, like any other person in their adolescence and early 20s, worried sick about what your career was going to be?
Yeah, what am I going to do? Well, the thing is, I was always quite envious of Stella, because Stella always was drawing and designing and always looking through magazines, and I think she always knew. And I loved photography, and I grew up looking at beautiful photography books like Diane Arbus, things like that, and loving the intrigue of those characters and those adventures. But I never actually then thought that could be me. I was a later bloomer in that sense. I didn't really know what to do, and when I did, I was just... Which is kind of similar to my mum's background. She did a similar thing. She found it in her early 20s.
You eventually picked up a camera. Were you never tempted to be like your dad and play the guitar?
No, weirdly, I never learnt an instrument. I think being around it, and also I think being around it so much, he was the musician and Mum was she played as well. So we had access to, my brother's a musician, he plays.
James, yeah.
We all used to sing a lot, but I think just, being around it all the time, I'd never thought to actually play myself. I did learn later on, I can play, all the main chords on a guitar. Can play a little bit of guitar, but you know, maybe because Dad's such a great musician, I kind of left him to it and listened to music rather than played it.
Obviously, you saw your parents playing live when you were touring with Wings. Did the music ever become an irritant to you?
No, apart from if we were, as little kids, we were watching telly and Dad would be playing the acoustic guitar in the living room, and then we'd be like, oh, Dad, please, we're trying to watch the telly and you're like playing. And then we'd laugh because, you know, we'd be like, how many people would love to be sitting here with you doing that? And we're just like, really, really want you to stop.
How are you so unspoiled? You are so not a rock star's daughter.
Thank you, but I think part of it, although I don't think I got a great education from a sort of academic point of view, I think the benefit from going to the local comprehensive school is that I just had normal friends from the local area, you know, different jobs, different religions, different everything. All my friends were kind of normal kids from the area. I don't think they would have let me get away with it. And my best friend, one of my main best friends, is someone that I went to school with from when I was 12. So
who you're meeting for lunch later?
Yeah, who I'm meeting for lunch, exactly. So a lot of my friends are like family now as well. I like those kind of close relationships.
Have you sent your own boys to the local comprehensive school?
I sent them to local infant school, and then now they don't go to the local comprehensive school. But my mum and dad moved us out of London, I think, on purpose, because they found it's not easy. That don't even get me onto the whole school system. I try to encourage them to socialise with lots of different people.
I mentioned your baby photograph on the cover of the McCartney album. It was taken just after the Beatles split up at your parents' Scottish farm, High Park Farm in Mull of Kintyre. It was a physical and emotional retreat for your parents. How was it for you? What's your relationship with that place?
Beautiful. It's beautiful countryside.
Do you still go?
I haven't been a lot since my mum passed away. It was more somewhere we used to go every summer growing up. We'd split our summer holidays between Scotland and America, and we'd drive up to Scotland via Liverpool often. So it was kind of like a real grounding. This is what you come from. That's what we did each year. But it's where I had a sense of freedom, and you could just explore. Me and Stella, because we're closest in age, would often go out on little adventures playing. And just that openness and that sense of not feeling like you are in a bubble where everyone's watching you, I think was really healthy for us.
How simple was the accommodation? Because apparently your father got a very run-down farm.
Very. It was very funky. I think Mum and Dad, especially Mum, because the woman is often the homemaker and the one doing the interior design. She was very funky and she liked to keep things quite basic, and we'd all share. Mum and Dad had a room, and then me and my sisters would share a room, and it was all quite close quarters. But I think that kind of brought us quite close together.
I was thrilled when I saw how much Scotland is featured in your book. I could tell that you just love the place, as well as Sussex, as well as Arizona, which are also important places to you. And there is a very amazing photograph taken in Scotland in 1995. We see Paul and Linda on an empty golden beach. The sea is glistening. They're skipping hand in hand.
It's sweet, isn't it?
She's wearing a bikini. He's wearing his swimming shorts. They look like teenagers.
Yeah. Well, they were. They always behave. I mean, Dad still behaves like a teenager. They're agile and vital couple, and that was the summer holiday when we were all there. But I like that. I like that they'd skip along the beach holding hands, and I like the fact that it is a very personal picture, but it gives something away, but it doesn't give too much away, which is kind of what interests me. It's like I don't want to be too nosy. I don't want to be intrusive, but that is quite interesting. And when I hear that, it is quite a cheerful, it's almost like you imagine little birds and butterflies flying around them and stuff. It's like you hear a cheerful song when you look at it. And I love the fact that that's in Scotland and it looks like it's a beach on the Maldives.
It's a love picture.
No, it's really sweet. I like it. It makes me happy, and I like that you get all that from a picture where they're so tiny in the centre of the frame. That's kind of...
So tiny and so together.
Yeah, no, it's great. I like that one.
You were in your late 20s when you got your first commission to photograph Helen Mirren. This is a beautiful, elegant portrait. She is a beautiful and elegant woman. Could you have got it wrong?
Well, I had had some commissions before. I'd been commissioned to take pictures of Stella like a diary in France when she became head designer at Chloe. So I'd already had commissions, more sort of candid reportage, but this was my first formal portrait. And I could have got it wrong because I could have overdone it. But I'm happy with this because although I'm petrified because she's such a strong character and someone that I respected as an actress, I wanted to try and get something of her, and I love like her necklace, which is her necklace, and that little tattoo on her hand, and it sort of makes me ask questions, which I kind of wish now, if I hadn't been so green as a photographer, I would have said, what's that tattoo about, and where did you get that necklace? Like, is there a story behind the necklace? But, you know.
Are you less petrified now?
It's interesting. I get more of a kick now out of directing people than I did.
But being petrified and perhaps conveying that can be a way of drawing people in.
Yeah. But then again, I try not to show, if I'm nervous or if someone is I've taken quite a lot of portraits of quite overpowering characters, and you can't really show vulnerability in those situations because then you can get a bit swamped and you can come away with not what you wanted. You're kind of doing something to please other people, and I can be a bit of a people pleaser, so I have to not show the fear in my own. It's not fear, but I have to show that I'm in control, because otherwise, and also people can get a bit scared if you're, it's like being a parent, if you look like you don't know what you're doing, the kids pick up on it and everything goes to pot, whereas
so just act as if
it's like pretend you know what you're doing, and then it makes your subject more comfortable as well, I think.
When you photographed baby Leo Blair the day after he was born, 2003, were you petrified then?
I was. It was funny. I used available light. I didn't set up any. I don't generally like to use a lot of flash if I can help it anyway. I usually use constant lights, like almost film lighting. But with that, because it was such a young baby and because it was quite a secret project, I didn't want to bring in a lot of equipment. So what I needed was my tripod to hold the camera still, and I went to go and get it, and I think because I was so nervous, I forgot the tripod. But that same thing, I couldn't say to anyone, oh my God, I've forgotten my tripod. So I kind of had to pretend that it was all fine. But inside I was like, this is my one chance to get these pictures.
Why were you asked to do it?
I was asked to do it because I'd met Fiona Miller, who worked with Mary Blair, and we'd used one of Mum's photographs to help raise money for a charity project she was working on. And I think, it was quite a big thing for the first baby in decades, or maybe ever, to be born within Downing Street. I'm not sure of all the facts. So they basically approached me. It was quite top secret, and they said, we want someone to come in and take the official pictures, which I just said yes to because it's such an intriguing project. But I didn't think they'd be on news at 10 but it was amazing. It was an adventure, which is what I love. I, got shuffled in the back entrance and up into their apartment, and it was like a real normal family. It wasn't taking a picture of the Prime Minister. It was a picture of a family portrait.
You're listening to Stark Talk on BBC Radio Scotland. I'm Edie Stark, and I'm in the London studio of photographer Mary McCartney. Actually, the truth is we're sitting in the cupboard, aren't we? This is really not very glamorous.
We're sitting in my store cupboard.
Because it seems to be the quietest place, because everything's pretty busy. You have photographed Kate Moss many times. There's a great shot of her kneeling on a chair, back to the camera, grubby feet, which I love, unzipping her dress. She's used to performing for the camera, so I would imagine that she is much, much easier to photograph than some of the stronger women who you photographed, like Joni Mitchell, Vanessa Redgrave, Marianne Faithfull. There's a fantastic shot of her next to a statue of the Virgin Mary, both looking down. Chrissie Hynde, who famously hates being photographed. What sort of process do you use for people who aren't models?
Well, also what's interesting with the women that you just said is that they have had, over the years, they've maybe had quite a lot of bad experiences or agreed to certain things with photographers, and then afterwards thought, I'm never going to do that again. So certain times they'll arrive and go, well, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to do that. And then I'm like, okay. And I will work around what people want, and I will try to make them happy and make them feel comfortable, so that then I get a better connection with them and a closeness to them. But I find it quite challenging, and I quite like the energy of strong women like that, because they can be quite feisty and they're always interesting. Because I kind of think that should be celebrated. Like the Vanessa Redgrave, though, it's just such an open, and her use of her hands, it's so theatrical. So she's quite a tactile, passionate person. And I think having those open palms really shows that. And I think Marianne was at a real point where she was kind of reflecting on her past life and going into more of a life of sobriety. And, you know, that was quite interesting. It's actually not the Virgin Mary. I think it's St. Catherine.
Ah.
But yeah, I love religious icons. I think they're just so beautiful and romantic as well. And I think with Marianne being in that situation with the icon just made her quite reflective and a bit more vulnerable than she often comes across.
I think she's very vulnerable.
Yeah, but sometimes she can... I'd met her once before and photographed her, and I felt like she was sort of trying to be a bit tougher than she was. And on this one, she was really... You know, the walls were down and she wasn't guarded, and she was just really kind of letting out a bit of emotion, which I thought was... It's always quite a compliment when someone can do that with me, so yeah.
Do you feel differently about photographing men? There are pictures here of Peter Blake, Jules Holland, Dennis Hopper, Tommy Lee, gorgeous body. Don't like the tattoos, but the body's fabulous.
I know, but I love the tattoo. It says Mayhem. I mean, that is just... If anyone's going to have a tattoo that says Mayhem, it should be him. I mean, I have to say, I like all different people, shapes and sizes and different, you know... For me, it's about the adventure and who that person was. Where did I take the pictures of them? Where did it take me? Like Dennis Hopper, it took me to his home in Los Angeles. He was quite playful. Yeah. He wasn't ill. I don't think he was ill when I took photographs of him. But yeah, I was really sad to hear afterwards that he'd been diagnosed with cancer. But at the time, there was no atmosphere of that. It was more, he was kind of quite cheeky and quite fun. And I love his character. I think, you know, those kind of people intrigue me. So that was fun. And
have you ever fancied a man too much to take his photograph?
No, but sometimes if they're quite cheeky, it can be a bit embarrassing, like if they're looking at you, because sometimes, you know, it hasn't happened, you know, there's been no sort of shenanigans or anything, but there are times where it can make me blush a bit.
Of course, one of the most famous men in the world, you've photographed countless times, your father, Paul McCartney. Does it feel weird photographing him?
No, it doesn't. Well, I've done both. I've taken pictures of him if he needs pictures for press stuff, but then generally the ones that I like best are the ones where it sort of happened within life and we might be in a situation in a beautiful setting and I take some pictures of him. But he loves those kind of pictures. Often he'll say we're somewhere nice and he's like, let's go out with the camera and take some pictures. That's what he liked doing with Mum, so I suppose it's quite sweet that now he doesn't have her to do that with. Sometimes he'll say to me, come on, let's go and take some pictures. Or if he's riding, I'll say, can I take a picture of you on the horse? Those kind of moments are the ones that are the most special ones. And sometimes when people are close to you, you can forget to take nice pictures of them. Like, I wish I'd taken more photographs of my mum. There's one in the book where I took a picture of her side of the bed when she got out of bed in the morning. You know, I like that idea of a portrait, but without the person being in the picture, and the bed is your most sort of safe, intimate place.
It is the most poignant picture in the whole book, because her presence is there and she's not there. I think also what's special about that photograph, which is called Mum's Side of the Bed, it almost feels like a premonition that you took that photograph, almost subliminally.
Maybe subconsciously. I didn't do it consciously, but maybe looking back on it, maybe subconsciously. But I think also, you know, your parents aren't going to be around forever, and maybe I was doing it for posterity.
You were only 29.
And I was always, it's something I'm interested in doing. There's a lot of different references to beds in my book.
I know, Tracy's bed.
It's not necessarily as thought out as like, oh, you know, it was more, I'm interested in beds. It came from the aspect of it's personal to her, and I could see that when she got out, she, you know, we'd been having tea in bed, and then she went to go and get dressed, and it was like you could just see where she'd been sitting, and you can feel the weight of her there, just in the creases on the material and the linen and stuff.
Oh, it's exquisite.
The sun came through the window, and it sort of put a shaft of light onto it. So those kind of things I'm glad I took, because I'd been thinking about taking that for years and hadn't, and then I was like, I'm actually going to do it now. I'll just take it. I took it quite quickly and thought I'll do it more often, but actually it was the only time I did it. So
you took those very famous photographs of her just a matter of weeks before she died, though. They're not in the book.
No, they were taken because she was doing a cookbook, and we were doing them for more press shots for her. So we had a really good time doing them that day, but I suppose that they don't have that same feel to them. There was one picture that I could not find the negative of that I really wanted to put in the book that I still haven't found. It will come up one day, but it was taken in Scotland and it was a misty day, and she's standing by a wooden fence with her horse on the other side of the fence. She's got it's a black and white picture, but she's got a camel coat on, and it's like a misty morning.
You're making me think, you were interviewed by somebody and you said that sometimes when you got annoyed that you couldn't find a photograph or you didn't get there in time, your mother talked about it being on your soul camera. That makes me think about your soul camera.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't get too obsessed about not finding it because I thought she would let it go. She'd be like, well, I can imagine it in my mind. That moment was acknowledged, but if I can't find it, don't beat yourself up over it. She wasn't one for trying to make people feel bad, and she didn't like people to feel bad, so I suppose I've let that go. And I know it'll come up. I know it is somewhere.
When you took those last photographs of her, do you think she knew
No.
that she was dying?
No, I don't think so. No, she always had hope. I mean, not that she told me about, maybe, I mean, obviously she would have been worrying about it, but no, we had fun that day. We were doing them